The best is yet to come, and babe, won't it be fine?
You think you've seen the sun, but you ain't seen it shine.
Hello everyone, welcome once again to Ask the Treksperts. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Sarah.
Sarah, today's question comes from StarCraft Russia, who asks, would Q have worked in a TNG film? And then the follow-up to that is, would that have saved the franchise? Is the question. So what do you think? Q in a Trek film. There was a lot of talk when the Trek movies started happening, especially after First Contact, when we finally got the Borg, which was something a lot of people wanted to see on the big screen. How much Trek TNG fans really wanted Q. What do you think about that?
I am a Q fan. I enjoy seeing him in episodes. In some, he's better than others. There's some roles I prefer him in. But just as a fan looking at the franchise, I would have loved to have seen Q in a film. Would it have worked? They'd need to have the right story. Q could not have been the whole plot. And I'm sure someone somewhere would have said, oh, we got Q, what else do we need? They would have needed to pick the right story, but it could have worked, and I would have loved to have seen it, as long as it was done well.
Yeah, the weird thing about Q is that there are different incarnations of Q. There are different kinds of Q, which is weird because he's only in so many episodes. He's not even in quite a dozen, I don't think. And there was an evolution of the character, where he's very different later on than he was from when he first started. The character kind of started as nearly a Trelane type, and then which is where the idea from the character came from. And then it kept going, and it kept evolving, and he became different things. And it wasn't like his character evolved so much as the writers kept thinking of different ways to portray the character. And so you didn't feel like you were watching the evolution of a character, or at least me, I didn't feel like I was watching the evolution of a character so much as one writer would say, no, this is a better way to do the character.
He didn't have a character arc. He just had, well, we want him in this role this episode, and we want him to do this episode.
Sometimes he's like an imp with a bunch of powers, and sometimes he's kind of he's this godlike. Well, he's always a godlike creature, but in other places he's more of a role model. You know what I mean? Where he's actually teaching a lesson under the guise of being an imp, and then there's all these other things in between that.
Yeah. And then sometimes he's the leader of this Q faction who's going to war with the rest of the Q.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, once he became the face of the Q, that was kind of strange, because you always got the sense that they were all really disciplined, but he was the rebel. Yeah,
especially when they threw him out of the Continuum.
He was the biker guy whose parents didn't like him. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
he was that type. Q is a weird character because I feel like he didn't start off as strong as he got, and then he got worse as it went along.
Yeah, I think
after about the middle.
If Q had his movie, I think the movie would have done a lot toward actually setting a character for him.
Sure.
He would have been on screen enough, and then his character would have been established, and a lot of fans would be calling and looking toward that film as an example of what Q should be in the future.
Maybe trying to find a way to bring some cohesion to all those different types.
Yeah.
And to maybe help string it together and make it all make more sense, where it feels kind of disconnected.
Yeah,
the way that it is.
In a way, that happened to the Borg, where they said, okay, well, we've got these little pieces so far. We've had these 3 episodes, kind of telling us what the Borg are.
Yeah, 4, but yeah.
But 4, but we haven't really seen them do very much. I mean, there's Best of Both Worlds, but okay, what was up with the scent? So here's this big major episode where they do something huge, and then Voyager takes it from there.
Right.
And it kind of shapes who the Borg are as a whole. It gives us the Borg Queen and all the things that First Contact give us. But I think Q could have, the same thing could have happened for Q if he had a movie.
No, I mean we did an episode about the Borg Queen, and a lot of there are some fans who feel like First Contact in some ways kind of messed with the Borg and messed them up. I'm not sure that a movie could have messed up Q, because there were already so many different incarnations of him as it was. I'm not sure you could mess him up.
They could have gone a direction that we didn't like. Where,
True.
okay, here's this one episode that we don't like him in, and they pick that one.
That version.
I mean, that could happen. And I'm not saying that the what they did with the Borg was necessarily the best thing. I'm just saying that it gave the Borg a cohesion that they could then move
It
from.
certainly gave them a better look, if nothing else.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I absolutely see what you're saying, and it seems it seems like the comparison between the two is inevitable. What I would the reason I would almost resist a Q movie, and I mean, like, I would have liked to have seen it just because Delancey's awesome.
Yeah.
And
You always want to see more Delancey.
Delancey is the reason that character got so popular. If you think about it, he's only in so many episodes, and we met him at a convention, and he was talking a lot about how bizarre it is that is the thing that got him famous. Like that's the thing that people think about, and he didn't. From his perspective, he didn't do a lot of work. And I mean, if you compare it to what other people, other actors in Trek, that's true. He didn't do a lot. He was only in so many episodes.
Yeah.
So Delancey is the reason that character is so extremely popular, because there are episodes that he's not written even all that well in, but Delancey can take any bit of take any bit of dialogue and turn it into Q dialogue. It seems like.
Yeah.
The reason I almost would have resisted a Q movie as much fun as it would have been is because after All Good Things, I don't know what else there is to do with Q and Picard. If that makes any sense, I see why Q went on to Voyager, at least from a fan standpoint. We wanted to see more of him, but and you can. You can talk about whether or not he was utilized well in that. I think that he's as good in Q is as well utilized in Death Wish as he could have been in Voyager, and then it all goes downhill from there, in my opinion. But once he makes his big point to Picard and All Good Things, I don't know what else there is to say with the character.
That's true.
With Picard, and as far as TNG goes, Q and Picard very much had this relationship, and I feel like it kind of. It kind of goes where it needs to, and
Maybe
it's done.
they could have explored why Q and Guinan hate each other. I think that should have been the big plot.
That should have been the movie?
It should have been a prequel. No, maybe not a No, it should be a movie that takes place in the present that explores the past of Q and Guinan.
I always, but that's interesting. That brings up a thing. Now, this is the second episode in a row that we've done on movie questions, and of course, Sarah and I are always talking about how we like Trek in television a lot more than on film. But of course, at the moment, films are going to be more on people's mind. The thing is, if you did something like that, I think it would be really interesting, because I always would have liked to have seen, and I was thinking this a long time ago, even around the time of like Insurrection, I always would have liked to have seen a Trek movie that wasn't just about a crew. You know what I mean? It wasn't a TOS movie, it wasn't a TNG movie. Star Trek's this big, giant universe. There's all kinds of other things you could do, and it seems to me like it would have made almost more sense, and it would have used the movie format better if you'd just taken some characters from the universe that we'd seen before and run with them.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of the reason that Wrath of Khan is so successful.
Yeah.
Is because that was a character we saw one time, and then they said, you know what, he's off maroon on this planet. There's a story to tell. What the heck was up with Q and Guinan? Why did they hate each other? There's a story to tell.
Yeah. And what was Guinan going to do when she did that? I mean.
Yeah. Well, yeah. What was going to happen? Does she have some kind of electro powers in her fingers? What was she going to do?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that if you did a Q movie, it could not have been the same formula that we saw in the other TNG movies, and I think that's ultimately what I'm getting at. Is it couldn't have really been the crew's on a starship and they're dealing with stuff. It either needed to be, I don't know, tell me if I'm wrong. I think it almost would have needed to have been either a much smaller kind of movie or a much larger kind of movie.
Sure. Q being omnipotent as he is, it could have had a cosmic scope.
Right.
Or he could have played the insignificant imp sort of character. I mean, depending on how they went with it.
Here's the thing. Even when you're not talking giant scope, there were times, and one of my favorite times, where Q is not being the imp, but it's a smaller scale, and that's Tapestry. When you and I know I like that episode more than you do, but that is the kind of Q I like. Q is acting like he's just messing with Picard, but he's making a point. He's making a really good point.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's taking Picard back through his past and showing him where things went wrong, but also showing him that if things hadn't gone wrong, his life would have been very different, and that he needs his bad past. He needs his pain. So just because you do a smaller scope doesn't mean that he's that impish character.
Yeah.
He could very much still be the big cosmic godlike character, but he's doing something with it. And I think that, I guess what I'm saying is, a Q movie could have either been this giant, we've got to save the whole universe kind of plot, this big cosmic thing, or it could have been a very character-driven piece. It could have been a very small, intimate kind of piece.
Yeah. Well, it would be nice to see a Trek film that was a character piece, as opposed to what we've gotten generally, especially with the later films, where it's just, here you go, here's a big action film we put on screen, and everyone's supposed to like it because it moves fast.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying. But anyway, so then the second part of the question was, would it have saved the franchise? Now, that's a complicated question, because at the time that a Q movie could have been put out, the franchise wasn't dead, unless you're saying, let's make another TNG movie post Nemesis that has Q in it. And I think that at that point, the actors are almost too old to continue playing the characters. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe not. There were TOS movies all the way up into the early '90s, so that may not be fair. But it does seem to me to be kind of odd to have Delancey continuing to play that role that late, because even if the rest of the characters, even if you don't mind the rest of the characters looking quite a bit older than they did in the series,
Q's not really supposed to age.
It's a little bit weird for Q to age, yeah. And when we saw him in 7th season Voyager, that was really pushing it. I mean, you see Q's hairline receding, and you gotta wonder why.
Yeah, he's a big proponent of male pattern baldness. He supports that idea. No.
So let me ask you a question. Trying to tackle this part of the question. So Enterprise failed. I mean, Enterprise got canceled earlier than it could have if it had gotten better ratings and people liked it better. So then the only place you've got, if they're not going to make another, because the movies and the TV show are not necessarily going to have a giant correlation. If the movies do well, they'll keep making movies. If the TV show does really well, they might make movies, but they'll also make more TVs. So the question is, if Enterprise had done what it did and just kind of fell apart, and if they hadn't done Nemesis, and if they had done a Q movie, would we have seen another Trek film before the 2009 movie? Because you had that gap. You had Nemesis in 2002. And then they didn't make a movie for a long time because they ended up deciding they had to reboot the franchise, and that's why it took so long. They were biding their time, and then they did that. So what would have happened?
I don't know. I personally think that the TNG crew would have been too old to do another film.
Really?
I was getting tired of seeing them on screen.
Yeah, but I'm saying, what about instead of Nemesis?
Yes, if the Q movie had happened instead of Nemesis, I don't think we would have gotten another TNG film after that. But I'm not sure what direction they would have gone.
Yeah, but my question isn't, would it have saved TNG movies? My question is, would it have saved making Trek movies? If the movie had done well, they wouldn't necessarily have had to make another TNG movie. There was always talk of other possibilities, and for a long time, not a long time, but early on with Enterprise, there was already talk of them making an Enterprise film. So I'm just saying, like if they said, okay, this continuity people are going to see on screen. If the Q movie had been successful, would they have maybe made another one and not waited and not rebooted the franchise? I guess what I'm saying is, would the Q movie have saved the prime continuity?
I really don't know. The way it seemed to me that they were running out of ideas, as they couldn't go forward because Voyager brought home all the technology, and they couldn't go backwards because Enterprise failed. So
where would they have gone?
And that was the thing. And I thought that was the reason that they went to reboot the continuity, was because, oh no, there's too much canon, we can't work around it.
That's not the primary reason. Because even with all the promotional materials that were saying, you know, a generation's final journey and stuff like that, there was still talk that maybe they would make one more if Nemesis was successful. The reason they didn't come back and make another movie right away was because Nemesis bombed, and that's it. Yeah. You know, that's the reason. I think that ultimately, a lot of the reason that they didn't end up making another movie very very soon is possibly because of all the continuity. But I think it's more because of what you said, that we don't really know what to do if we went forward, but we don't know if anybody would go to see a prequel.
Yeah.
Before the reboot happened, there was a lot of talk about going back and doing the Romulan War on screen with new characters.
Yeah.
And as interesting as that could have been, I mean, it could have gone either way. That could have been great, or that could have been really awful.
Yeah.
It's kind of a niche, right? Is this something that's going to really play for a general audience, or is this something that's really being made only for the diehard Star Trek fans?
Yeah.
I don't. And by the way, I don't think general audience is necessarily a bad word. I think you can make a movie for a general audience that isn't necessarily dumbed down.
Well, how about Wrath of Khan?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
That's a good idea.
You don't have to know Star Trek to enjoy that film.
Yeah, great example of a Star Trek film that was made for diehard fans, but also for general audiences, and it wasn't dumbed down at all.
And is a really smart movie.
Yes.
Exactly. And so, you know, you can definitely, they definitely could have made a different sort of movie, and it still be for everybody.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know. You know, it's all speculation. Who knows what would have happened? And ultimately, we're playing, you know, we're playing a desert island game. What if this had happened?
Yeah.
You know. So I don't know. I guess the answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
But you know, the first part of the question was, you know,
would we have liked to have seen it?
yeah, I would have.
Sure. Absolutely.
I absolutely would have liked to have seen it, just to see him play the role again, and to play it with the people that made it great. Because Q is fun in parts of the episodes in Voyager, but the Q Janeway dynamic is different from the Q Picard dynamic,
Yeah.
and Picard is what made Q great.
Yes.
In my opinion. I think there's a reason that he played a lot more with Picard than he did any other characters in the show.
Yeah. They just had such a great dynamic together. I mean, Picard was one of these accept no nonsense kind of captains, and Q came in and messed with that.
And here was this guy who just threw out nonsense,
Yeah.
and he couldn't do anything to stop it.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think? Would you have liked to see Q in a film, in a TNG film? And what do you think would have happened to the future of Star Trek if that had happened? Because I think that the issue here is that, is Q was he a popular enough character that he would have done what the Borg did?
Yeah.
You know, I think that's really kind of the question.
Yeah.
Leave us a comment, let us know what you think, and also if you have an idea for something we might do or an episode we might review in a future Ask the Treksperts, leave that in the comments as well. And thanks a lot for watching Ask the Treksperts. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Sarah.
We'll see you next time.
The best is yet to come.
The best is yet to come. The best is yet to come.